Moving to Willow Creek Heights was supposed to be a fresh start after years of grinding in the startup world. I craved peace, quiet, and an escape from the pressure cooker of city life. What I found, however, was a different kind of pressure, a subtle yet pervasive demand to conform. The neighborhood was a sea of beige and taupe houses, each with a perfectly manicured lawn, a neatly trimmed hedge, and a complete absence of personality. It was like living in a real-life version of the Stepford Wives, only instead of robotic housewives. It was robotic houses. My own house, a modest two-story colonial, was no exception. It was fine, beige siding, white trim, and a perfectly acceptable, utterly unremarkable front door. And that's where the trouble started. In a fit of mild rebellion, I decided to paint the front door. Not a shocking color, not anything outrageous, just a deep, rich royal blue. A splash of color, a hint of individuality, a subtle protest against the beige monotony. I thought it was a reasonable compromise. I was wrong, dead wrong. The inevitable knock on the now blue door came a few days later. It was Brenda Mortimer, the self-proclaimed guardian of suburban aesthetics and president of the Willow Creek HOA. She stood on my porch, clipboard in hand, her expression a mixture of disdain and righteous indignation. "Mr. Smith," she began, her voice as crisp as her beige linen shirt, "I'm afraid we have a problem with your front door." "A problem?" I asked, feigning innocence. "What seems to be the issue?" "The issue, Mr. Smith," she said, her voice rising slightly, "is that it's blue. It's too unique. It doesn't blend in with the established aesthetic of our community. It violates the community vision." "Community vision?" I repeated, as if it were some sacred, divinely inspired mandate. "It's just a door, Brenda. It's a color I like. Blue." "This isn't about what you like, Mrs. Smith," she retorted, her eyes narrowing. "It's about maintaining the harmonious, unified appearance of Willow Creek Heights. We have standards. We have rules." She tapped her clipboard for emphasis. "And your bold choice of color is simply unacceptable." Brenda's visit was followed by an official HOA violation notice, a crisp white envelope containing a sternly worded letter and a threat of escalating fines. The Willow Creek Heights HOA, it turned out, was a masterclass in petty tyranny. They had rules for everything. Lawn height, no more than 3 inches. Fence styles, only the HOA-approved colonial picket design. And even the types of flowers you're allowed to plant, nothing too colorful or exotic. They banned backyard trampolines, unsightly, outlawed bird feeders, attracted pests, and even dictated the acceptable color for outdoor furniture, beige, of course. I tried to reason with Brenda, pointing out that the blue door was hardly a radical departure from the neighborhood's aesthetic. I explained that I'd chosen the color carefully, that it complemented the house, that it was, in fact, quite tasteful. But my arguments fell on deaf ears. Brenda Mortimer was not interested in reason or logic. She was interested in rules, regulations, and maintaining her iron grip on the aesthetic soul of Willow Creek Heights. The final ultimatum arrived a week later. Repaint the door within 30 days or face escalating fines and potential legal action. Brenda delivered it personally, a smug smile on her face, clipboard clutched in her hand. "If you want to live here, you must follow the rules," she stated bluntly. I took the notice, looked at it, and then looked back at Brenda. A slow smile spread across my face. "Oh, I'll follow your rules, all right," I thought, a plan, audacious and wonderfully ridiculous, beginning to form in my mind. The Castle Gate. I needed a new strategy, something that would not only defy Brenda, but also make a statement. A bold, unmistakable declaration of independence. If Brenda and the HOA wanted conformity, if they wanted to blend in, then I'd give them conformity, but on my own terms. I'd give them something so unexpected, so audacious, so utterly un-Brenda-like that would make her perfectly coiffed hair stand on end. And then it hit me, a medieval castle gate. It was historical, wasn't it? It technically adhered to the HOA's vague guidelines about blending in with the community's aesthetic, if you squinted and tilted your head. And it was, without a doubt, the most gloriously inappropriate response to Brenda's demand for conformity that I could possibly imagine. Brenda Mortimer, I declared internally, a surge of defiant energy coursing through me. You want a war on color? You've got one. Prepare to be castleified. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to unleash the full force of my medieval-themed rebellion. Construction chaos. Finding contractors willing to build a medieval castle gate in the middle of a suburban neighborhood was unsurprisingly a challenge. Most of the companies I contacted were understandably confused by my request. "You want to build what?" was a typical response, followed by a long silence and a hesitant, "Are you sure you have a right number?" But I persevered, explaining my vision carefully, omitting the HOA revenge aspect, and emphasizing the need for authenticity and historically accurate design. Finally, I found a company, Old World Construction, that specialized in historical renovations and custom-built structures. The owner, a man named Bob, apparently all contractors are named Bob, was initially skeptical but intrigued by the challenge. "A castle gate, huh?" he said, stroking his beard. "Never done one of those before. Usually it's just decks, patios, that sort of thing. This is a bit different," I admitted. "Different is good," Bob said with a grin. "Different is interesting. And frankly, after 20 years of building beige boxes, I'm ready for something interesting." His crew, a mix of seasoned carpenters, stonemasons, and a surprisingly enthusiastic blacksmith, shared a sentiment. They asked questions like, "So this drawbridge, it's actually going to work? And are we going to need special permits for the gargoyles?" I assured them that the drawbridge was mostly for show, though I did have a small winch installed just in case, and that the gargoyles were well within the HOA's admittedly vague guidelines on decorative garden features. They looked at me, looked at each other, and then shrugged. They were in. They were ready to build a castle. The unveiling. The construction process was a spectacle in itself. Trucks arrived, delivering tons of stone, massive wooden beams, and wrought iron hardware. The quiet suburban street was transformed into a medieval construction site, filled with the sounds of hammering, sawing, and the occasional accidental clang of metal on stone. My front yard became a gaping hole, a miniature quarry, as the foundations for the archway were laid. The neighbors, understandably, were fascinated. They gathered at the edge of my property, watching construction unfold. Their expressions a mixture of curiosity, amusement, and a growing sense of what on earth is going on over there. Brenda Mortimer, of course, was not amused. She'd storm over, her face a mass of fury, and demand to know what I was doing. "Just some exterior modifications, Brenda," I'd reply with a perfectly innocent smile. "Making sure my house blends in with the neighborhood. You know, historical accuracy and all that." Her eye twitches were becoming legendary. The final product. Finally, it was done. My masterpiece, my monument to petty revenge, my suburban castle gate. It was magnificent. A 15-foot-tall stone archway, crafted from rough-hewn granite, spanned my driveway, creating a dramatic and imposing entrance. Massive wooden gates, reinforced with iron studs and intricate carvings, stood guard, ready to repel any invading HOA officials. Two fierce-looking gargoyles perched atop the archway, their stone eyes seeming to follow Brenda Mortimer's every move. The front door itself had been transformed into a functioning drawbridge, complete with heavy chains and a mostly decorative winch. And for the final touch, I'd installed a series of torch-style LED sconces, strategically placed to illuminate the entire structure at night, their flickering flames creating a dramatic medieval ambience. It was magnificent. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. Brenda's meltdown. The unveiling of Smith Keep, yes, I named it, was a moment I'd been eagerly anticipating, and Brenda Mortimer's reaction did not disappoint. She stopped dead in her tracks, her jaw dropping, her face going through a series of colors that I didn't even know were possible. This is unbelievable," she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that could shatter glass. "You've turned your house into a medieval fortress. It's an abomination." I emerged from behind one of the gargoyles, a picture of calm, unruffled composure. "Good morning, Brenda," I said, my voice dripping with feigned innocence. "I see you've noticed my exterior modifications. What do you think?" I was going for a historically inspired look. "Historically inspired?" she sputtered, her face now a shade of purple I'd previously only seen on overripe eggplants. "We live in suburbia. There's no medieval heritage. This is insane." It's a historically inspired entryway, Brenda. I corrected her gently. I'm simply embracing the architectural heritage of our community. I gestured toward the imposing stone archway, the massive wooden gates, the flickering torch sconces. I'm trying to blend in, remember? Isn't that what the HOA wanted? Blend in, she roared. You call this blending in? It's preposterous. It's a castle in the middle of Willow Creek Heights. The aftermath. Brenda's meltdown was more satisfying than any approved shade of beige could ever be. She called an emergency HOA meeting, demanding immediate action to address the castle crisis. But the other HOA members, for once, were not swayed. They'd seen the castle gate, they'd seen the crowds of people admiring it, and they'd even, perhaps secretly, enjoyed the spectacle of Brenda's meltdown. The HOA's legal counsel, the long-suffering Mr. Henderson, was forced to explain that there was nothing they could do. The castle gate violated no existing HOA rules. It was on private property. It was technically an exterior modification which was allowed, and most importantly, any attempt to force its removal would likely result in a costly and embarrassing lawsuit. But it's a castle. Brenda sputtered, her voice cracking with desperation. It's ridiculous. Yes, Mr. Henderson replied with a sigh. It is, but it's also legal. A new era. Brenda Mortimer's reign of beige terror was over. She resigned from the HOA. Her letter of resignation, a masterpiece of passive-aggressive self-pity. She blamed everyone but herself, claiming she was a victim of a coordinated campaign of harassment and a neighborhood-wide conspiracy to undermine her authority. But everyone knew the truth. She'd been defeated, not by lawyers or lawsuits, but by a medieval castle gate, a moat, and a collective will in a neighborhood that had finally had enough of her tyranny. Smith Keep, meanwhile, became a beloved local landmark. Families strolled by in the evenings, admiring the imposing structure. Children pretended to be knights defending the castle from imaginary dragons. Even the local historical society got involved, listing the property as a site of minor historical interest. In the end, my act of petty revenge had inadvertently created a community hub, a source of neighborhood pride, and a constant reminder of the glorious downfall of Brenda Mortimer. And as I sat on my throne, a ridiculously oversized wicker chair positioned in front of the castle gate, I raised a glass of iced tea in a silent toast of the triumph of creativity over conformity. Who knew that a blue door and a burning desire for revenge could lead to all this? Sometimes you just have to build a castle to find your peace.